Good afternoon, everybody. My name's David Hepburn, and welcome to the Virtual Future webinar. I'm the president of Actionstep, and I'm joined today by Steve Blundell. I'll introduce him more a little later, and James Shorey. Actionstep has nearly 2,000 law firm customers globally in Australia, New Zealand, USA, and UK, and we're seeing some very exciting trends within the legal industry around the world. And we'd like to share some of those trends with you today. We're going to cover three key areas today. Global virtual law trends. I'm going to talk about those. James is going to talk a little bit about preparing for change and some of the considerations you have if you're thinking about moving to a more virtual or distributed future. And Stephen Blundell is going to talk about practice management considerations and technology challenges that you may need to overcome. If you have any questions through the webinar, please feel free to log those questions on the right-hand side on the application. You'll see a questions area. Please type them in there, and at the end of the session, I will chair a discussion and attempt with James and Stephen to answer those questions. So first up, global virtual law trends. Well, as you know, there are some new types of firms that are proliferating within law around the world. There are virtual firms where these are individual lawyers as contractors to a unified business, and these businesses are usually run out of a hub, and they provide accounting, technology, and support services while the lawyers work remotely and independently. Legal networks are a collection of individual law firms brought together by one entity, which delivers a benefit and collaboration to all the firms. And then there are franchises, and those create a unified brand rather than a unified business, and they're primarily a referral network. Hybrid law firms are traditional law firms with both employed lawyers at the head of the office hub and remote contracted workers. We're seeing a lot of those out there today, and traditional law firms moving to that model. Business legal services are a lot of the rest. They're consulting lawyers and various other services organizations that support the law industry. We're seeing around the world traditional firms growing at reasonably conservative growth rates, but the distributed and virtual firms are growing very quickly. You can see there 30 to 50% compound annual growth rates are very impressive, but they're becoming from a small base. Here in the UK, we work with a firm called ignitionlaw, who I'd probably class as a virtual law firm. In the Australian market, we're working with a very innovative organization called bytherules, who focus on conveyancing services, and they're a franchise model. And I thought today that it would be interesting for me to tell you a little about these two firms and how they operate and how they achieve their business goals. So first up, ignitionlaw. Well, they have a very commercial law focus and a very entrepreneurial type organization. They're very fast growing right now, seeing about 50% year-over-year growth. And they have a team of 40-odd experts around the world, but those experts are growing rapidly. And their client base is not just in the UK either. They service clients and organizations throughout the globe. And as I said, they're very entrepreneurial and focus a lot around the client. That engagement model they have with the client is one of their key value propositions to them. And given their growth rate and given that they have a distributed nature, their ability to onboard new staff is extremely important to them. So having workflows, systems, and processes and technology that's easily to adopt was very important for them. And technology within Ignition is actually a major differentiator for them as well. They use it in all sorts of ways to engage with and deliver service. And given that distributed nature and those contract lawyers, I suppose, that are engaged with Ignition, it's important for them to be able to integrate with all sorts of kind of devices and equipment that those lawyers bring to the business. Ignition been a customer of Actionstep for about 2 years. bytherules, on the other hand, again, very innovative organization, focused on property conveyancing, and they have a very fast-growing team distributed across almost all of Australia, and they have franchised essentially conveyancing shops around Australia and provide a very disruptive conveyancing model. Fixed fees, very low price fixed fees, and they have a very, very highly oiled and well-organized marketing and client engagement strategy. They obviously collaborate very closely across the team, and their business model, you don't have to be a lawyer to run one of these franchises. The organization provides standard workflows and methodologies for you to deliver a conveyance and some other legal services. So the ability for them to kind of keep in their lanes and focus very clearly on what's required to deliver that service is very important. And they selected Actionstep primarily to focus on that workflow that they need to follow. So what has changed in the marketplace? Well, a lot of things firms are experienced right now are due to pricing pressures or competition. Customers are asking for price certainty and fixed price arrangements. Lawyers themselves have different expectations and are seeing opportunities to work remotely and achieve a better work-life balance. And many firms are struggling to access the talent they need. And that talent, could be in Canada or the United States or New Zealand. So being able to engage that talent on some specific area of law is actually a critical business requirement. And obviously clients are changing too. They are having very different demands and expect a different service and a different engagement model with their lawyers. From a technology perspective, and I've covered some of these, I suppose, in those two case studies I mentioned earlier, but cloud technologies are more prevalent. Automation technologies are becoming available. Workflow that enables you to distribute tasks around teams in an automated fashion. A lot of collaboration tools, whether it be ability to video conference for very low costs. Onboarding is a major cost for law firms, and big implementations tend to stymie and stall new ideas, and trying to figure out how to deploy easily has been another key technological advance. Mobile technology scalability, Stephen's going to talk about that later. Security permissions are fundamental if you're going to remain regulatory compliant. But again, many new technology trends are enabling the technology to support those market changes that are occurring. So with that, I'm going to hand on to James, who's going to talk to you a little bit about preparing for that change and some of the themes he's seeing. James is our UK Regional Director here at Actionstep.
Thanks, David, and hi everyone today. I wanted to continue this webinar by talking about some of the trends that we're seeing around the world when it comes to technology, both within traditional and virtual law firms. So the first trend that we're seeing is that firms are focusing more on having the right tools for the jobs and suitable repositories for information that they need to gather. Once you know what information you need to capture, you're most of the way through the battle. But you want to make sure that information is entered and that it's entered into something that you have confidence will guide you through what you need. And you can then extract that information later. So we've seen that there's basically two types of tools emerging to address information capture and storage. The first are prescriptive systems. Now, these tell you what to do very easily. These systems have learned the processes, know it inside out, and will take you through it step by step. The second type are more customizable solutions. They allow you to take the processes that you know and you've built up and build it out yourself. So both of these, both prescriptive and customizable solutions, have pros and cons. And which type will be a better fit for you will depend on your existing knowledge and the amount of time that you will want to spend building the system. In our opinion, the best option may even be a mix of the two. One that knows the process, comes to you pre-built and ready to go, but then allows you to customize and adjust it to suit your own needs. So the other trend that we're seeing, which is related to the whole webinar itself, is for traditional legal practices moving to become virtual offices. A virtual office allows you to define your office not just as a space within four walls, but as any place. It is the move away from needing to be at your desk, because that's traditionally where all your filing cabinets have been historically. While some practices are closing the office and working from home, a virtual office doesn't necessarily mean that. It's more often meaning that you can do your work where you are. The benefits of a virtual office are that you can spend more time with your clients. A common thread that we see from many modern day surveys of lawyers is that some of the moments they enjoy the most are the time spent with their clients, helping them with their legal problems, not doing all that admin work in their office. Operating in a virtual office does allow you to do that. So the ability to access your information from your laptop or tablet or phone means that you can meet your clients at their offices, at the cafe down the road. You're not just limited to your practice's four walls. So with access to the information you need, you can operate from anywhere. It also allows you to achieve a healthy working environment, one that will cater to you getting the work you need to be done, but also allowing you to do things like, drop your pet off at the vet or catch your after-school performance from your kids if you want to. It's important to note that a virtual office is not just having the files you want where you are, but also being able to do the work where you are. So as David just mentioned, firms such as Ignition and bytherules, they've embraced virtual ways of working from their inception. But more and more, we're seeing traditional office-based firms embracing virtual working, whether it's to help with the rising office costs and to try and offset that by having less seats in their office, or just allowing firms to hire staff without having to take geography into consideration. So virtual offices can also expand on the ways that you communicate with your clients. There are firms we've spoken to who have gone as far as creating chat services on their websites that are part automated and part have artificial intelligence in them. A person can come to the website, type in a basic question and have it answered without any contact with a solicitor. That cuts out any wasted time answering mundane questions. But more importantly, if the question was not a simple one, that question would then be routed to a staff member, so your solicitors can just focus on the difficult questions that need focus. There are simple options too, so like a contact us form on your website that allows people to contact you may be invaluable for capturing new clients. And sending documents via client portals can be more secure and just a bit more personal than email. So once you've captured those clients, ability to share information with them through different channels means that you can communicate in a way that saves the lawyer's time, but also suits the needs of the tech-savvy clients as well. So all of this just leads to my last point, which is about using tools to do the work for you. In the USA, one of our regions, we are seeing the rise of websites that will create legal documents automatically. So you can go to the website and just have a will created for you. So the client will fill in a series of questions, and for a nominal fee, they get a legally accurate document at the end without engaging with any solicitor at all. This is a great example of technology reducing the time required to be able to do items. Once this is set up, the process is mostly automatic. It's faster, easier for the client, and the work is done for the firm without any interaction on your side. One important consideration, however, that I would mention is that such tools leave room for you to recognize and capture when the automation is not a good fit. If you can flag that a particular client's needs warrants your attention, then you can stop the automation and suggest that they contact you to discuss it instead later on. This is important. At this point, you're adding value to the client. The knowledge and help that you provide at this point will have the most benefit and be of the highest value. And then when your firm grows, as a result, all the additional casework floods in. This should be offset by all that automation that you've put in place. Automating communications, document production, even processes that your staff use on a day-to-day basis means that lawyers become more efficient. There. So that's everything I've got to talk about today. I'm going to pass over to Stephen Blundell, who deals with clients day on day and has some lessons from the ground.
Okay, thank you, David and James. So far, that's all been very exciting stuff. However, as a highly regulated sector, as you know, there's so much to consider before we move to a distributed virtual environment. But before I do, just a bit more about myself and Advantage Consulting. We specialize in helping law firms improve their processes through compliance, technology, etc., and are leading the way on helping firms move from the traditional working environment with the office and the paper files to a virtual environment and going paperless, or a hybrid of the two. The approach that we will take still has some significant considerations that I'll talk about now. Okay, the biggest barriers we found to remote working so far is that management don't see the benefits in bringing it within the practice. Or if they do, more often than not, it's their IT system that either doesn't support it, or it can be very costly to create a workaround. Firms have had old systems that require a secure VPN, a virtual private network, to be set up, and or a physical key token for the staff so that they can control access to the system and reassure management and the IT department that the person logging in is the person that they want to be logging in. It's not someone trying to inadvertently access the system. You would have come across the same sort of things when trying to access online banking. However, from a user point of view, this can be inconvenient. What happens if they need to work on an urgent matter on the train home and they've left their token in the office? How can you continue to work? Can you? Or would they have to wait till tomorrow when everything else is coming through on the emails and the phones? However, nowadays there are more convenient, cheaper, and secure options like two-factor authentication through your smartphone, meaning only that person, unless someone else has exactly the same face and/or fingerprint, can access the system. Again, it's reassuring your IT department, your compliance consultants, your security policies, that this person logging in is the person you want to. There's a fine balance, however, between having the flexibility for remote working and ensuring it's kept secure, your brand and reputation is protected, and everything is kept confidential, because things can go wrong very quickly if you don't have controls in place. Therefore, you should consider having documented policies and procedures on what is and isn't permitted within the remote working environment. For example, you might want to use privacy screens when working outside of the office. You may want to restrict access to certain areas of the system when they're outside, as well as setting up passwords and encryption on memory sticks if you are still using them. So when you are looking at a new practice management system, you need one that meets your needs not only today, but as you grow and take on new staff as a business, and this is wherever in the world they might be. Like David mentioned previously, ignitionlaw have staff across the world, but Actionstep allows them to all be connected, working on the same matter and seeing what is happening without the back and forth emails that they might have had in the past or other firms have had to endure. I've also seen disjointed attempts where firms have been using different specialist software packages for different aspects of the whole client and practice management journey. This might be around one system for time recording, another for client accounting, a separate one for documents, and so on, which in theory, it does all sound great, they're specialist software packages. But in reality, it's a nightmare. To get meaningful information can be very difficult, and I'll come back to that shortly. Or you may be in a long-term contract with your current provider because it was a thing to do at the time. They offered you 50% off if you sign up for 5 years. However, signing up for 5 years, they know you've got you as a client for that 5-year period. They don't have to continue to develop and innovate and update their software package. An on-premise server might be an option for you, and for some firms it is a great option within the central hub office. But you've then also got to think about how the users securely access the data on the server. Well, you need to set up the virtual private networks and also engage IT consultants to help set this up for you. So the end result is you end up paying for the practice management software system and an IT system at the same time. However, there are software packages that are 100% cloud-based, meaning you just need your browser to be able to access it. And you don't have to have high specification computers with the latest processors and high amount of memory. This online browser experience is the way Microsoft Office and Google themselves are going with their online versions of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Everything nowadays can be run through the browser. And this really does allow you to work from anywhere. Some systems, they do claim to be cloud-based, but you still have to install the software on the computers. I mean, if when you get a new staff member, you've got to set up the computer, you've got to install the software, any specialist software on top of that, just before they can even start working. With a browser-based system, you'd be able from day one for them to have some initial training and start their role. The remote working business is all around flexibility. Staff may be leaving the traditional 9-to-5 environment to achieve a better work-life balance. But the SRA and hopefully your own culture and brand values require you to have control over what they do, and probably more importantly, what they can't do within the system. There may be matters you don't want them to be able to access or post transactions on the client account, or you may have put in procedures and controls in respect of the billing, invoicing your clients. Therefore, you should look for a system that allows you to have the freedom, or the staff to have the freedom, but the management to have the control over it at the end of the day. You also be putting in a lot of data within the system. So data and the information you get out of it is only as good as the data that puts in and what the system will allow you to do. As a firm, you may have different KPIs, key performance indicators, and ways to monitor success. So it's not just about the bottom line at the end of the day. It might be about client retention rates, client feedback scores. Again, some of the systems that don't allow you to easily access this information. So you should look for one which allows you to build and set up reports and lists that enable you to see, monitor, and understand what this information actually means for the business. Overall, you should look for a system that's being built with virtual working at its heart, as the right system will actually become the core of your business. So to date, we've done, as David says, we've done quite a lot of implementations of Actionstep. Some have gone very well, some have taken a lot longer than we expected. So I just want to share with you a couple of lessons learned. Number one, I'll say don't try everything. Don't try and get everything done for day one. Take it step by step. Because if you try and get all the features trained within the staff from the outset, it will in fact have the opposite effect. It'll be too much for them, and it'll be an information overload. You'll end up with them engaging very little with the system and just doing the basics. When I'm doing a training, I explain this to the clients and use the phrase, it's like trying to drive a Formula One car, having just passed your driving test. You'll be able to press on the loud pedal to go faster and accelerate, and you'll be able to turn the wheel to go around corners, but that is about it. You definitely won't be racing. You'll need to think about how, when, and what you communicate the changes in the firm's working environment, and to promote this as a positive step forward to your staff and the firm, and develop a training plan on the back of that, because you may decide we're going to do one topic this week, and then the next week we're going to focus on another topic, and then next week we'll recap and gather feedback from what we've trained them on so far. So it is all a iterative process, any migration from one system to another. Another big hurdle we found is just purely data. This data might be in different systems, it might be out of date, or there might be lots of duplicate contacts or lots of matters on there that ought to have been closed. So you end up, if you're going to move all of it across, you end up moving a lot of dead wood over to the new system. I highly recommend you review the data in depth and plan a data migration strategy. And it may be the case you decide you're not going to transfer from one system to another. You're going to have the new system, and you'll just open new matters on there, and you have the old matters on your previous system. That approach we found has worked well for firms that they've got 10 different Mr. Smiths, even though it's the same Mr. Smith at the end of the day. If you do take that approach, you must have a clear cut-off date so staff know which system to access the matter on. So all matters opened from 1st of November on system Z, all the matters open prior are on the old system. This is fine from a client accounting point of view, because what you'll do when you're doing your reconciliations, you'll post, obviously if the system does allow you to, adjustments on both, and they'll match each other to the penny. As well as at the same time, I'd highly recommend you set yourself a goal of starting this at the start of the next financial year, and to close, so it gives you time to close down matters on your old system so the system gets cleansed. And if you get to a point where there's a manageable amount of data to be transferred, you do this and you transfer, export and import it at that time. But do not allow this migration strategy to straddle more than 2 financial years. Finally, as I've already mentioned, I would ensure you ask staff for feedback on the system as they're using it, because the staff are the ones with the most to gain from using the new system, but also the biggest barrier to its actual use. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Stephen. And I want to just now take a little look and see what we have in respect to questions. We've had a couple just messaged in here. One is here, what are the downsides of virtual law practice? James, maybe you can take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've talked quite a lot about the benefits of virtual law practice, less office space to pay for. You can cover greater geographical reasons, just general work-life balance and no commute is always a great thing as well. Those are the benefits of virtual law practice, but there are some issues with having all your staff around the country. The first just being lack of support. You're removing the head office, which means removing the support staff that come with that office. So most lawyers might have a PA, which you wouldn't necessarily get with a virtual law firm. And then also just the lack of socialization. Another downside of working for yourself is not getting the opportunity to network and meet like-minded people. The resolution for this is very much the same as Actionstep, just getting more tech solutions, because there are tons of tech solutions out there, like instant messages, video conferencing software are out there. You've got VoIP phone systems. All of these are great ways to just make sure everyone's connected. And then it's just up to the actual law practice itself to encourage networking events, encourage meetups, and actually make sure everyone's interacting, even though they're geographically separate. That's what I'd say.
Great. Let's have a look and see if we've got 1 or 2 more questions. What elements of a virtual law firm could traditional firms adopt to adapt to a changing market? So I might have a little go at that. Stephen, you might want to add something to this. So I think we see a lot of firms now sort of breaking down those walls between their lawyers and offering opportunities to work more virtually. And I suppose the elements that they need to think about really, as Stephen covered, are some of those access abilities, using the right sort of technologies so that they can securely get to and engage with the data they need to. Other pieces of the jigsaw there are around permissions and how you set up the access to matters and have key parts of matters or only specific matters accessible by individual people. That's another key part of the journey. And then I suppose mobile is another thing to consider as you kind of take these decisions. Can you access the system from a mobile application or a tablet type device as well? A lot of mobile working and engaging customers on their own sites can be done, if you have that sort of method of engaging with the solution. I don't know, Stephen, have you got anything else to add on what elements of a virtual firm should a traditional firm adopt?
What I would just say is it would need to make sure that all of the information, the file notes, the records of telephone calls is recorded within the system. So it's your single point of truth. And that does, although that might sound like you're putting a heavy reliance on the system, at the same time, if a system's got no fixed term contracts or short term contract, if the system doesn't then meet your needs at a later time, you can easily switch to another one as well.
Nice. Okay, well, those are the questions that we've had. I was encouraged and interested. I met with a client yesterday who was telling me he's runs a virtual law firm, and he was saying now there are something like 1,000 solicitors in the UK actually actively working within virtual firms of the 150,000 odd solicitors there are in the UK. So a small percentage, but growing very quickly right now, and an area that, as you potentially go through a practice management system purchase, you should think about the technology and workflow implications that they could bring. Thanks very much for joining us today. Thank you to James and Stephen for their input and content. We'll make this recording available on our website for you as well. And if you do have any further questions or inquiries, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, and goodbye.